It's time for Northwestern Outdoors Radio, the award-winning show that covers fishing, hunting, and all sorts of outdoor recreation here in the Great Northwest. Northwestern Outdoors is brought to you every week by Max Lure Company, a legacy of innovation since 1969, by Loophole Optics, America's optical authority, by Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors,
by Wallowa County.
Nature is on display in Northeast Oregon, and by The Real News, your fishing resource. Also by Shiloh Inns and Suites, providing you with affordable excellence. And by Mardon Resort, the place for fishing, hunting, and more in Eastern Washington. And now, it's time to head outside with your host, John Cruz.
Have you been busy this summer? I know I have been, between hiking, fishing, rafting, bicycling, and traveling to some great destinations here in the Northwest. Well, let's just say the last couple of months have gone by like a whirlwind. Speaking of which, we've got a real storm, a real flurry, a real whirlwind of outdoors fun coming your way this weekend. We're going to start off by talking to Milt Gudgel, the owner of Pacific Salmon Charters, one of my favorite guests, by the way. He's going to give us an update on salmon and tuna fishing off the mouth of the Columbia River in the Pacific Ocean. If you're looking for a good lure to use to catch some of those salmon, Lance Mers has got a great one to tell you about on this week's extended Max Minute. It's called the Sledgehammer, and yes, it will hammer those kings and silvers for you this summer. We're going to shift gears from fishing to bicycling during the second half of the show. Phil Edholm is the president of Lookout Pass Ski Area and the route of the Hiawatha Bicycle Adventure, located right at State Line, Idaho, Montana. We are going to go on a bicycling trip like you've never heard about before. The route of the Hiawatha is something else. You are going to love this bike ride that anybody can do that can ride a bike. Rick Schaefer, the self-appointed prime minister of nearby Wallace, Idaho, and manager of the Wallace Inn and an avid cyclist himself, will come on board to tell you about some other great bike trails you've got to cycle this summer in northern Idaho. And we've got our usual assortment of outdoor news and field reports for you. Stories that cover everything from vicious river otters to drones crashing international parks, the passing of a well-known outdoors rider, and word that a new record tiger muskie may have been caught in Washington State. And then, coming back to fishing, we're going to talk to Shannon Stanley Hampy again. She's going to tell you about the new date for the Ray Stanley Memorial Bass Tournament that was postponed last month when a firestorm swept into Pateros, Washington, where the tournament was about to take place. But before we pedal any further into this broadcast, David Sparks talks elk hunting with a hunting guide in Washington State on Sportsman Spotlight, brought to you every week by Shiloh Inn and Suites.
Western Big Game, David Sparks, Sportsman Spotlight. If you want the best outfitter for Western Big Game hunting, you have to give Mike Jenkins of Upfront Outfitters very serious consideration. Mike knows as much or more about big game hunting than anybody I know. Washington State.
Mule deer season starts October 11th. There's two separate areas. One runs until October 19th and the other area is until October 26th. And then our elk season on the west side for Roosevelt opens for rifle November 1st and runs until the 12th or 13th. And our elk season on the west side for Roosevelt opens for rifle November 1st and runs until, I believe, the 12th or 13th. There are species of elk that live only west of the Cascade Mountains. So that's where they originated. And now the only true Roosevelt left are west of Interstate 5, right along the Pacific coast, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, and into Alaska. And then the rest of the Roosevelt elk population has been introduced with Rocky Mountain elk. So there's a cross subspecies now, what they call a Cascade Roosevelt.
Are they smaller, the Roosevelt elk?
Antler size are smaller. Body-wise, they're the largest elk species. So a mature bull can weigh up to 1,200 pounds for a Roosevelt, whereas a Rocky Mountain 600 to 800 is a pretty good-sized bull.
This is David Sparks for Sportsman Spotlight.
Confused by so many national brand hotel reward programs? blackout dates, expiration dates, different points for different hotel rewards, and gimmicks? At Shiloh Inn Suites Hotels, it's simple. No blackout dates for any rewards stay. If we have a room available, it's yours. Hi, I'm Mark Hemstreet, owner of Shiloh Inns. As a rewards member, you'll receive free room upgrades, a dedicated personal agent to help book your stay, points that don't expire, points that can be used for free nights at any one of our beautiful hotels, or donations to your local school or free airline tickets, and much more. And as a special bonus, you'll earn 100 free bonus points just for signing up. From your very first stay, you receive free Wi-Fi, free breakfast at most locations. The kids stay free. We don't charge ridiculous resort or parking fees, and we're dog-friendly. Shiloh Inns, affordable excellence. American-owned and proud of it.
I'd like to tell you I just brought down that buck, but I didn't. I missed. And you know why I missed? Because of the scope I've got on my rifle. You see, my friends told me to get a Leupold rifle scope. Why? Well, because Leupold is America's optical authority. They make a huge variety of quality scopes for every need, and they make them right here in the Northwest. Unfortunately, I didn't listen. I used the cheap scope that came with this rifle when I bought it. And when it came time to pull the trigger, well, let's just say things were a little blurry. Now, I've got nothing to look forward to except a long, empty-handed walk back home. Next time I come out into the field, there's going to be a Leupold scope on my rifle. And next time, I'm not going to miss.
Leupold rifle scopes. Check out the whole line at leupold.com and look for them at a sporting goods store near you.
He said we're right on him. Without missing a beat, you'll drop your line down to 42 feet. If you don't screw up, it won't be long. Someone in this boat's gonna sing Fish On. Fish on, fish on. Do it by the boat, don't take too long. Set the hook, reel it in strong. Fish on, fish on.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. In case you haven't heard, the salmon fishing and the tuna fishing off the Oregon and Washington coast has been fantastic this summer. So we thought we'd go ahead and bring somebody on board to tell you more about it and maybe tell you how to catch some of these fish too. It's one of our favorite guests, Milt Gudgel, owner of Pacific Salmon Charters out of Ilwaco, right at the mouth of the Columbia River. Milt, welcome back. How was the salmon fishing today for your fleet?
Well, John, I tell you what, we getting calls here at 8 o'clock this morning. They were all done.
Oh, my God.
All the boats in the harbor, there's quite a few of them, was all back here by 11 o'clock with their limits. Does it get any better than that?
It doesn't get any better than that. That is insane. So you've got this fleet of boats. I know the big Buoy 10 fishery is going on right now. Are your boats basically in the mix with all those other boats there, or are they going somewhere else?
No, we're out in the ocean having fun. Lots of room. That way you get to enjoy it.
I would agree with that. There's something about combat fishing that doesn't always agree with me, but I get it. When the fishing's good, you're going to have a lot of competition out there. So let's talk about how your anglers are catching fish out there. Obviously, you're not going very far out in the ocean, are you?
No, we've been catching a lot of Chinook. They've been right on the beach in about 40 feet of water.
Oh, geez.
I mean, they don't have to go very far. Even though some of the days we've had a lot of wind over there because you folks have a lot of heat where you're at.
Right.
But, yeah, it's been very, very good. I mean, I've had fish in here up to 30 pounds.
Oh, fantastic.
Today's catch was mostly coho.
I was going to ask, yes.
Yeah, today's catch is mostly coho, but we're supposed to have the largest run of Chinook since 1939 or something.
I was reading in Northwest Sportsman magazine, the edition that just came out, they're basically expecting 2.5 million salmon come up the Columbia River between Chinook and coho this summer and fall. Just incredible, incredible numbers. Let's go ahead and help our listeners out a little bit. Now, if they're smart, they'll just give you a call and go out on one of your boats because, folks, Pacific Salmon Charters, very affordable fishing trip. But for those who want to do it themselves, What's the basic setup that your anglers are using out there?
Well, most of the anglers are using divers on their end of the line, diver and a regular salmon mooching leader. Some of them are using lead, but not very many people anymore use lead for some reason. But it's very effective, especially if you want to fish really like mooching down deep.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them even put a flasher on behind their divers.
Right.
It just is a more attractive. I don't know if that's for the people or the fish, but it seems to work.
Now, are folks using those big inline spinners like that's really popular at the mouth of the Columbia, or are they just basically putting a herring on a couple of hooks there?
They're putting on a herring or anchovies.
Oh, I always thought that was a
really
Southern Oregon trip. I didn't know that happened up at the Columbia too.
Oh yeah, anchovies. They're awesome.
All right,
absolutely awesome. Now in the river here, they're mostly using herring in the river.
Okay.
It's a larger bait. I'm not sure why that is, but that's what we use in the river, especially if you're fishing for kinks. They're a little bait. But trolling at anywhere from 2 to 4 knots.
Okay.
Right now, if you want to catch a coho, it seems like some days they'll only go on a hard troll, like 4 knots.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, move right along.
No kidding. All right, so you don't have to go out very far. If you want the cohos, you're going to be moving pretty fast. Anchovy or herring are the ticket. Let's shift and let's talk tuna. And folks, you're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're talking to Milt Gudgel. He is the owner of Pacific Salmon Charters right at the mouth of the Columbia River. Milt, how close are the tuna?
35 to 40 miles right now. That's what they've been for the last 3 or 4 years, 35 to 40 miles. Occasionally they go further, but not normally. And as we move into this season, even though we're catching tuna now, it's going to get nothing but better, a lot better. September is probably our top month for albacore.
Really? And that's interesting to me because I think most people have turned their attention to other pursuits by the time September comes, and people don't even think about that.
That's right. Everybody, we got these sharp sticks at animals.
This is true.
And the other thing that goes on, of course, you got school starting.
Right.
And all that. And the typical vacation is done by the 1st of September. Labor Day, everybody goes back to school after Labor Day.
Now, as I recall, Milt, your tuna trips are not overnighters. I know in some ports you're basically booking an overnight trip, but yours start really early and they come back the same day, don't they?
Yes, our trips are only 14 to 16 hours. They need to be in the office here between 2 and 2:15 in the morning and get on the boat and get underway. And they're going to get back Dock 30. How's that?
Fair enough. And if somebody goes out, you can't make promises. I understand it's fishing. It's not going to the supermarket. But generally speaking, how many tuna are anglers coming back with per person, and how big are these tuna on average?
John, that's a kind of a loaded question.
True.
But I will tell you that on an average right now for this time of year, they're getting about 5 apiece.
Okay.
Sometimes 6, but normally about 5 would call it that. Now, a little later on, as we get into September, that number will double, and they get up to 10 fish a trip.
That's a lot of tuna. How big are they?
Oh, up to 30 pounds.
Oh, my.
So here lately, our fish have been running 20 to 25 pounds. They've been very big fish. We're fishing in what we call green water. It's just inside of a hard edge. In other words, a temperature change. The larger fish seem to hang out there. And you hear these huge scores. Well, yes, you can get a huge score, but they're little fish normally.
I see.
These big ones, they catch them inside their home line. It's good. And some of the boats have to come home when they're full. That's it.
Sure. I get it.
Because tuna have to be taken care of. You can't let them just lay around. They got to get iced and all that stuff. The only problem that we have with John, I might as well tell you right up front, is people hit the dock and they want the tuna cleaned right now. It's not going to happen. You either have to spend the night and pick them up the next morning or have them processed and put them in the freezer or whatever. But asking for them the same day you get back, because they get back late, pretty tough.
Well, I would imagine, that's not too big of a deal to me. If I've been out in the boat all day anyway, I'm going to want to go to a hotel and hit the sack or maybe, go out and have a nice meal and a drink and then hit the sack. So that's not a big deal, but I'm glad you brought that up. One other thing that we need to talk about just briefly here before we go, I've never asked you, how do you go about fishing for and catching tuna off your boats? What's the tactic you use to do it?
Okay, well, first of all, we look for a temperature gauge. We find the temperature, and we put out a couple of hand lines off the back. Normally, it's a visual thing, especially in September. You look out there and you find a school of birds circling and diving on the water. Get upwind of them. We start throwing little live bait on a number 1 or a number 2 bait hook, which is mighty small hook, and over the side and strip out a bunch of line and hang on because Charlie's after it.
I love it.
Yeah, that bite can last 30 minutes or 2 or 3 hours.
Wow.
Sometimes. And it's really important these folks understand that tuna swim in a circle.
Okay.
If you've got one in the middle, the guy's in the middle here. Now, his fish is swimming in a circle. Well, the guy with the fish on the right-hand side, his is fishing in that circle, too.
I understand where we're going here.
So you do a lot of over and under. You cannot be able to move. A lot of screaming and hollering, shouting going on, and, I got one on, too. Get the net.
Oh, sounds like a blast. Milt, we are out of time, but folks, if you want to book a trip with Pacific Salmon Charters out of Ilwaco, Washington, right at the mouth of the Columbia River for either salmon or tuna, go to their website, PacificSalmonCharters.com. That's PacificSalmonCharters.com. They also have a toll-free number. It's 1-800-831-2695. That's 1-800-831-2695 or PacificSalmonCharters.com. Go ahead and look them up, book a trip, and say hi to Milt when you do. Milt, thanks, as always, for giving us the rundown of what's going on out there.
Thanks, John. Come see us.
Fish on. Oh, hit him again. He's still kind of squirmy. Somebody call my taxidermy. Fish on.
At Shiloh Inn Suites Hotels, 4-star accommodations come with something else you'll really appreciate: affordability. Hello, I'm Mark Hemstreet, owner of Shiloh Inns. Relax in Shiloh's beautiful deluxe smoke-free suites. Enjoy Shiloh's spacious pools, spas, steam, and sauna rooms. At Shiloh Inn Suites Hotels, we're making 4-star excellence affordable with more free amenities than most any other hotel chain. For reservations, call 1-800-222-2244 or visit our website at shilohins.com. Shiloh Inns, affordable excellence.
This is Commissioner of Public Lands Peter Goldmark. Whether you live on the west or east side of the Cascades, dry weather means greater risk of wildfire. Please respect burn bans and completely put out campfires. Get more information at dnr.wa.gov.
We're back with John Cruz on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
It's time for another Max Minute.
Fish on!
Brought to you every week by Max Lure Company. With us again, Lance Mers. And Lance, you gave me this sledgehammer lure, and I recognize this as something that charter boat captains and other anglers like to use off the Oregon and Washington coast for salmon, but I understand you've been using it to great effect on the Columbia River as well.
Yes, I have, John, and this thing is phenomenal with catching those summer Chinook and even fall Chinook. It comes with a 150-pound cable test on it.
Wow.
A size 5/0 hook. That hook is big enough to stop anything, including a sturgeon. The basic way to bait this is to fillet a herring strip, call it a strip bait, and place that herring on that hook and allow that free-flowing action in the water to create an added effect to an attractant to the fish.
Well, and the lure is an attractant itself. It's got this big flashlight blade, basically a mylar blade that spins at slow speeds, a big hoochie, various colors, and then again, that 5/0 hook that you're going to go ahead and put a strip of what again?
Herring.
A strip of herring. How about anchovy? Would that work too?
You can use anchovy, absolutely. But the cool thing about this blade, the flashlight blade, is it's becoming real popular with salmon fishing.
I mean, this is a big blade. Are you fishing this behind a dodger, or are you just fishing it straight off a downrigger?
Any type of flasher, dodger, or anything to that effect is going to give that added attraction in the water. So absolutely.
All right, folks. Well, there you go. A great salmon lure. It's a sledgehammer. Whether you're fishing off the Oregon and Washington coast, whether you're fishing in Puget Sound, or fishing for kings in the Columbia River, this lure is for you. Find out more about it at maxlure.com and look for it in your local sporting goods store. And that wraps up another Max Minute, brought to you every week by Max Lure Company, makers of the patented Smile Blade and world-famous wedding ring spinner.
Looking for the ultimate cooking machine for your backyard or patio? Look no further than Camp Chef's new pellet grill and smoker. With user-friendly features like an auto ignition, digital readouts, and internal meat temperature sensors, it's easy to smoke the tastiest salmon, ribs, brisket, and turkey you'll ever eat. And an innovative system makes cleanup a snap. Everyone will want the food you're cooking on your Camp Chef pellet grill and smoker. The quality smoker that's second to none. Find out more at campchef.com. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
Looking for the ultimate salmon and halibut fishing experience at a great price? Then make plans to enjoy the real news for the Wild Northern Fish-In. Taking place August 23rd through the 26th. You'll be fishing the protected waters around British Columbia's Queen Charlotte Islands during the day and enjoying first-class food and accommodations at night. If you want an incredible saltwater fishing experience you'll never forget, the Wild Northern Fish-In is for you. Find out more at therealnews.com. That's the real REEL news.com for the Wild Northern Fish-In.
That's the sound you hear when a fish hits the new Sonic bait fish from Max Lure Company. This metal lure can be cast, trolled, or jigged and will catch just about anything that swims in the sea, the river, or the lake. The Sonic bait fish has a unique vibration and flutter that can be rigged in 7 different ways. With all sorts of eye-catching colors and weights available, you'll be reaching for the Sonic bait fish as your go-to lure. It's the Sonic bait fish. And that's another fish on, only from Max Lure Company.
You're back with Northwestern Outdoors Radio, and I have just experienced the best bike ride in the entire world. At least that's what I believe. I'm broadcasting from Lookout Pass. It's basically state line, Idaho and Montana. It's the home of the route of the Hiawatha. With us here to tell us more is President and CEO of Lookout Pass and of the home of the route of the Hiawatha, Phil Edholm. Phil, thanks for a great day on the bike trail.
John, I'm glad you joined us on a beautiful day up here in the Bitterroot Mountains. The Route of the Hiawatha is one of the premier rail-to-trail projects in the country. In fact, the Rails to Trails Conservancy awarded the trail the Hall of Fame designation, which is one of only 15 trails in the United States that has that. And it's an absolutely gorgeous trail. The trail has been described as one of the most scenic rail beds in the country. It was built between 1906 and 1909, and in 1998 it first opened as a rail-to-trail project, and we have visitors from all over the world to come to enjoy this trail that has 10 train tunnels and 7 trestles. Some are 220 feet tall, and it's just a wonderful experience. It's all downhill, a gentle 1.6% grade, and people of all sorts of abilities can come and enjoy this trail, and it's a wonderful family trail also.
Well, and that's one of the big takeaways I took from this is, folks, if you can ride a bike and you're not afraid of the dark, you are going to really, really enjoy this trip. Because like you said, it's all basically flat or downhill. And folks, this is a ton of fun. How far did I bicycle today? I know I started in Montana, I ended in Idaho, and I had a great time in between for about 2 hours. But how long is the route?
The trail is 15 miles long, and one of the first things that you will do when you go down the Route of the Hiawatha is go through the 1.66 mile long St. Paul Pass Tunnel. It's a perfectly straight tunnel, but it has daylight at one end, and it's the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel, and it's quite an experience to go through there.
It really was. And folks, another interesting thing about traveling through this tunnel is that it's a little cool. You might actually want to bring a sweater even on a hot summer day because it's a year-round temperature of 38 degrees in there. And you're not only going to bicycle through that tunnel going down, but at the very end, you're going to get a chance to bicycle through it again. And I guess we better talk about how this works. If somebody wants to enjoy this great rail trail experience, they show up here at Lookout Pass, and what happens next?
The bike rental shop and souvenirs and food service and other facilities are available at Lookout Pass Ski Area, which is located at Interstate 90 at the Idaho-Montana state line, exit 0. From there, you need to drive to the next exit, which is actually the first exit in Montana. It's exit 5, and you just follow the signs to the East Portal Trailhead where there's a large parking area. And that's where you launch, and that's where the vast majority of people start their ride. And again, the first thing you'll do is go through the St. Paul Pass Tunnel and then on down the trail for 15 miles. At the bottom, and that trailhead is called Pearson, is where you catch a shuttle that takes you and your bike back to the west portal of the big tunnel. So at the end of the day, all you do is pedal back through the big tunnel to get to your car. And I tell you, at the end of the day, that tunnel feels pretty darn good when you're going back through.
Tell you what, it's a nice summer day, and that 38 degrees felt just blissful on the way back. So you're right about that. Let's talk a little bit about the history. How did it get its name, the Route of the Hiawatha?
Well, this rail bed was the Milwaukee Road that was originally funded by John D. Rockefeller way back at the turn of the century. And the real reason that went through this area is he wanted to get at all the cedar that was down in the St. Joe River Valley. This was the last transcontinental train bed that was built across the United States, and this is the route that it took. So it started way back when, and originally it was a freight system, but then eventually we had passenger lines on the Milwaukee Road, and one of the famous trains was called the Olympian Hiawatha, and so hence the name, the Route of the Hiawatha, was eventually chosen by some locals, and that's the name that's used for the trail today.
You know, folks, you can actually go this 15 miles pretty quick if you want to, because like Phil said, it is mostly downhill or flat at the worst, but you need to linger a little bit. Number one, there's these incredible views. The tunnels are a ton of fun to bicycle through. The trestles, where you're like up 220, 230 feet in the air, are just breathtaking to go ahead and experience. And the history that's along the way. Great signage, great interpretive signage that covers the whole history of this railway and a lot more.
This was one of the first electrified trains in the country, and the Milwaukee Road was famous for that electrification that took place between Harlowtown, Montana, and all the way to Avery, Idaho. Lots of history on the trail. There's 46 interpretive signs as you go down the trail, and it talks about everything from the colorful folks that lived there along the trail to a time when there was some runaway trains, and the barley product that spilled out of the train cars was eaten by the bears, and the bears ate a bunch of fermented barley there and had a good time. And so there's a lot of fun stories out there. And it talks about the 1910 fire, which swept through this area and burned 3 million acres and was the largest fire in the United States ever recorded.
You're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're broadcasting from Lookout Pass, state line at Idaho and Montana. We've had an epic bike ride today along the route of the Hiawatha, and we've talked about the history, we've talked about the journey itself. Let's talk about a few other things. A lot of wildlife along the way. The most common wildlife I noticed was a lot of ground squirrels, a lot of them very hungry and willing to take food from you. But what other kinds of wildlife do the bicyclists see when they're heading down the rail trail?
Well, what we enjoy on the trail, and we see it quite frequently, is we see moose, deer, elk, an occasional bear, and it's really fun. And the other neat thing about this area is after you have a day visiting and riding the Route of the Hiawatha, you can stop by and stay in Wallace, Idaho, where the whole town is on the National Historic Register, and there's a wonderful collection of restaurants, antique shops, and museums, and a lot of fun things to do down there.
I would absolutely second that, folks. We actually had our Northwest Outdoor Writers Conference in Wallace last year, and it is an incredible town to visit that's full of outdoor recreation and history, like you said. Definitely worth more than just a pit stop. It's worth a day or two of your time. Phil, one other question here. You know, there's people that are listening to this show and they're thinking, well, gee, I don't have a bike or I don't have a lot of experience. Can they enjoy the Route of the Hiawatha adventure?
You know, we found that a healthy 5-year-old can enjoy the trail going down one way in comfort. And a couple years ago, we had a 91-year-old gentleman who was a season pass holder who came out and rode the trail every other week for the whole summer. So, you know, a wide variety of people can enjoy the trail, and we see a lot of folks that haven't ridden bikes for years, and they enjoy themselves immensely out there. And you know, once you've ridden a bike, you'll know how to go again, and it's a very gentle trail.
Couple things you need to remember. If you have your own bike, make sure you bring a helmet, make sure you bring a light. You have to have both those. You also have to have a ticket, which you buy here at Lookout Pass to go ahead and get on the trail. You just can't show up on the trail and ride out there. I do believe you can buy tickets at the trailhead, though. Is that correct?
Yes, you can buy day-use tickets from any trail marshal or shuttle driver out on the trail. So if you have all your gear, if you got a bike, helmet, and light, you can go right to the trail and enjoy yourself. Or if you want to use your credit card, stop by Lookout Pass and get everything right there.
And again, if you don't have your bike with you, but you want to enjoy this adventure, if you're just traveling through the area like we have been, stop on by. The bike rentals are affordable. As a matter of fact, the whole adventure is affordable, and it's one you're never going to forget. Phil, we're running out of time, but if people want to find out more about the Route of the Hiawatha and the great bicycling adventure you offer, is there a website we can direct them to?
Yes, go to ridethehiawatha.com or skilookout.com, and you can get complete information on the trail.
That's ridethehiawatha.com. Ride the Hiawatha, spelled Hiawatha, Hiawatha. That's rootofthehiawatha.com. Check it out and then make plans to come on up here this summer to experience this incredible bicycling adventure. Phil, thanks for telling us all about this and hosting us on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
John, thank you. I'm glad you had a great day.
When I'm backpacking in the mountains, I like to travel light. That's why I carry Camp Chef's ready-made gourmet outdoor meals. These freeze-dried meals cook right in the pouch. Just add water. With menu choices like cheesy lasagna, teriyaki chicken with rice, and more, these meals taste great. Look for Camp Chef's ready-made gourmet meals at a sporting goods store near you or at campchef.com. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
Psst, yeah, you, the guide, outfitter, or outdoors business owner who's listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. Have you ever thought of becoming a sponsor of our show? Contact me, John Cruz, through our website at northwesternoutdoors.com for more information. That's northwesternoutdoors.com, helping you get the word out about your outdoors company. Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. It's time again for news and reports from the field, brought to you every week by Mardon Resort in Eastern Washington at Potholes Reservoir. We've been telling you about the annual Lake Games and Beach Party at Mardon, and it's going to happen next weekend on August 23rd. If you own a boat and like to have fun, you've got to come out for this event that has you boating from island to island, playing some fun games, and drawing a card after each one. Your goal is to get the best poker hand you can. At the end of the day, prizes will be awarded, and the beach party that goes with it is so much fun, they've been doing it for 7 years. Find out more and register now at mardonresort.com. That's Mardon Resort, where the fish bite, but we don't. We start off our news by telling you about those river otters. They're not as cute and cuddly as you might think. There have been several attacks on people by river otters in the Northwest during the past couple of weeks. The first occurred in western Washington's Pilchuck River to a Radek Bazant who was floating down the stream when an otter popped his raft from below and started chewing on his leg. In Radek's words, the cute little otter was not so cute. I'm sure a boy and his grandmother who were attacked in the same river at the end of July agreed with that assessment. The otter in this case, which has been sighted with pups, attacked the two as they were swimming and sent both to the hospital with significant injuries. A third attack took place at Lake of the Woods, east of Kalispell in Montana. Fish, Wildlife, and Park officials are investigating the attack by two adult otters on a boy who was swimming in the lake on August 4th. The boy was treated for multiple bite wounds to his legs at a clinic in Polson. I know I need to be worried about bears and cougars and maybe even wolves, but otters? Well, that's a new one. In our next news brief, we learned that drones really don't belong in certain places, our national parks being one of them. And this story from the Outdoor Press Room drives home the point. Officials at Yellowstone National Park say a tourist flew his drone into the park's famous Grand Prismatic Spring at the Midway Geyser Basin, where it remained submerged in the boiling 160-degree water. Unmanned personal aircraft are not permitted at Yellowstone or other national parks, following a directive issued earlier this year. Next, we note the passing of a well-known outdoors writer, Chub Eastman. He was the field editor for Sports Afield and a freelance writer with a long list of articles in distinguished hunting publications to his credit over a 40-year writing career. He passed away in his sleep on August 3rd at his home in Bend, Oregon. Chub, a longtime member of the Northwest Outdoor Writers Association, who also served as a vice president for Nosler in Bend, is survived by his wife, Gloria. Rest in peace, Chub, and thanks for sharing your love of the shooting sports with several generations of shooters and hunters around the world. Turning to field reports, has a new record tiger muskie been caught in Washington State? That's the word from Field and Stream, which reports a potential state record muskie was recently caught in Curlew Lake, Washington, one of the state's top muskie waters. Washington angler David Hickman landed the 37-pound, 14-ounce fish on July 25th. It measured 50.37 inches long and, if approved by the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, will top the current record of 31.25 pounds set in 2001. Tiger muskies are a crossbreed of female muskellunge and male northern pike. The result is a sterile fish that allows fish agencies to stock small numbers into lakes like curlew without worrying they'll overtake other fish species. Hickman's fish was 12 years old and one of 336 fish planted in 2002. And with that, let's head back to northern Idaho for some more bicycling. Talking to Rick Schaefer, he's the Prime Minister of Wallace, Idaho. At least that's what he calls himself. He's also the General Manager of the Wallace Inn. Great place to stay. Highly recommend it. And Rick, it turns out, is quite the cyclist himself. Rick, we just had a fantastic bike ride on the route of the Hiawatha, just a few miles from Wallace at the Idaho-Montana state line. But I understand if you want to stretch your legs, there's a longer trail, the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes. Tell me about this one.
Well, what's fun about it, John, is Trail of Coeur d'Alenes is such a fantastic trail and such a contrast to the Hiawatha. The Hiawatha, with its tunnels and trestles and being smack dab in the Idaho backcountry, is fantastic. And then you come to the Trail of Coeur d'Alenes, 72 miles of paved, non-motorized, and rail trail glory. Basically, it's a flat ride, except for the bookends from Mullen to Wallace is a little bit of a 7-mile, maybe a 2.5% grade, and from Hayburn State Park to Plummer, Idaho, is another about 3.5% grade for about 6 miles. So in between that, it's a flat ride. Being just over about 58 miles, it rises less than 600 feet, which is basically nothing for a cyclist.
And Rick, one of the highlights of this Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes is getting to cycle past the Chain Lakes. Tell me about that section of the route.
Well, what's interesting in including that, John, about the trail itself, it's kind of like an evolution. The first half of the trail, say you're starting on the east side in Mullen, is the evolution of the mining industry as you've traveled through the Silver Valley, the largest silver-producing mine district in the world. And then about Pinehurst, you go into the flora and fauna part of the trip where you leave Interstate 90 and you go along the South Fork of the Coeur d'Alene River, and going past Cataldo, you enter the Chain of Lakes, which is an area that creates this giant waterway. It's an estuary for waterfowl, elk, moose, osprey, eagles, and it's a natural stopping point for flying by flocks of geese and other birds.
Let me ask you, do most people stay at Wallace and start there and then end up down at Hayburn State Park and spend a night there? Or, how do people usually cycle this 71-mile route?
Well, many people have a feeling from what they've read that they need to start in Plummer or they need to start in Mullen. You don't need to start at either end. There's so many excellent trailheads along the way. You can pick your mileage, 5 miles, 10 miles, 50 miles, or 142 if you want to go both ways, and pick your place to start. We see historic Wallace as the hub of this trail system, not just the Trail of Coeur d'Alenes, but also the route of the Hiawatha, giving a great access to the Hiawatha, which is only 19 miles away by highway, and the Trail of Coeur d'Alenes, which is right outside the Wallace Inn's front door.
Whether you want to do the short 15-mile day trip that's the route of the Hiawatha that we talked about earlier in the show, or the 71-mile Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes, it sounds like Wallace, Idaho should be your hub. Wallace is a historic mining town. Lots of history there. Great little town to visit. And while you're there, make it a point to stay at the Wallace Inn. Very comfortable accommodations, like we said before. There's a restaurant, too, and you'll get to meet Rick, who can go ahead and give you more advice about bicycling in the area and other outdoor recreational activities. Rick, why don't we give folks a website for both the Wallace Chamber of Commerce and the Wallace Inn before we go?
For the Wallace Inn would be thewallaceinn.com, and our phone number is real easy. It's 800-NIDA-FUN, 643-2386. And then the Wallace Idaho Chamber of Commerce, which has a lot of great reference points, is wallacechamberidaho.com.
So you've got the wallaceinn.com or wallacechamberidaho.com. Two great websites. Go ahead and visit to plan your adventure to northern Idaho and also portions of Montana for some bicycle rides you are not going to forget. Rick, thanks for telling us all about it on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thank you, John, and everybody come visit us.
The road is calling you to experience one of Oregon's 7 wonders, the Wallowas. So grab your hiking boots and camera and capture the beauty and grandeur of Northeast Oregon's Wallowa County. Experience nature like never before when you saddle up and ride into the Eagle Cap Wilderness, hike the trails of the Wallowas, hear the wind rush through the bunch grass and view the wildlife of the Zumwalt Prairie, or ride the churning waters of the wild and scenic Wallowa, Snake, and Grand Ronde rivers. This summer, take the road that leads to wonders. It begins at WallowaCountyChamber.com.
Good hunters know before you take that shot, you've got to see the whole picture. Now, the best way to do that is with a spotting scope, binoculars, or a rifle scope, but it's got to be from Leupold. Now, Leupold is a Northwest company with a reputation that stretches across the world for making superior optics. Look for Leupold Optics at your local Cabela store, Dick's Sporting Goods, or online at Leupold.com. Leupold, America's optical authority.
Psst, yeah, you, the guide, outfitter, or outdoors business owner who's listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. Have you ever thought of becoming a sponsor of our show? Contact me, John Cruz, through our website at northwesternoutdoors.com for more information. That's northwesternoutdoors.com, helping you get the word out about your outdoors company.
We're back with one last cast from John Cruz on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
All right, it's time for some upcoming events, and one that we want to let you know about is the Ray Stanley Memorial Bass Tournament. Now, I know you're thinking, I thought we talked about that back in July, and we did. This is the one-day bass tournament that takes place near Pateros, Washington, up on the upper Columbia River for bass, both smallmouth and largemouth bass, but it got postponed. Why, do you ask? Well, if you haven't been following the news, there was a huge fire up there, and in fact, over 300 homes have been lost from the Carlton Complex fire that's been burning in this area. The tournament organizer is Shannon Stanley Hampy. She actually was fighting fire when the town was burning down around her. She's been fighting fire since then. She's also been working on disaster relief in the community, but she's still putting on this tournament. What's the new date, Shannon?
August 23rd.
August 23rd, one-day tournament. Tell me more about the Ray Stanley Memorial Bass Tournament.
Well, it's been over 20 years, the same time, the same place. This year with the situation, we still had people that say, we want to fish and we want to come to the terrace, and so we're going to make it happen.
Is this a register in advance, or can people just show up on the morning of August 23rd to participate in this derby?
We like people to just show up. Be at the boat launch by 4:30 next to the highway there on the Methow River to register and have your boat and your team, and we'll get you going.
So you need a boat, you need a live well because it's catch and release. What's the entry fee for this tournament?
This year it will be $105, and we pay out 1 in 5 at 80%.
Nice. Any other prizes or any sponsors out there that are giving some real goodies that people are going to want to know about?
And lots of sponsored prizes, from dinners, local restaurants, to gas cards to local gas stations, and gift cards to bigger retail stores. We've got a lot of prizes to give to people this year.
Now, I'm assuming one prize is going to go to the big fish. And how big has the big fish been?
Right around 4.5. Usually it'll get you some money for the big fish.
All right, so there's your target. And of course, you want to get the heaviest bag limit as well. Another reason to go is that this area was really hard hit. And one of the things that they really need is economic stimulus. So head on over there, make a weekend out of it, spend some money in the local businesses, and you will be helping this community rebuild by doing so. Shannon, if people want to participate, can we give them a way to go ahead and find out more?
Yes, you can contact me directly at 509-679-6406, or you can go to our Facebook page, Ray Stanley Memorial Bass Tournament.
So the Facebook page again, folks, is the Ray Stanley Memorial Bass Tournament. It's taking place in Pateros, Washington on the upper Columbia River on August 23rd. You can actually just show up that morning to go ahead and participate. To find out more, call Shannon at 509-679-6406. That's 509-679-6406. And one more time, 509-679-6406, or Facebook, the Ray Stanley Memorial Bass Tournament. Shannon, hang in there. You're doing great things there, and I hope you get a little time to go fishing yourself soon.
Thank you, John.
If you enjoy birding, you may want to head to a couple of state parks in Montana this week. On Friday the 22nd at 8:30 p.m., there's going to be a presentation about the raptors of Montana at Lewis and Clark Cavern State Park, and several raptors will be in attendance, to include a couple of owls and a hawk. Cooney State Park in south central Montana is the place to be on Saturday the 23rd at 5 p.m. when a bird talk will take place, profiling the wide variety of birds that call this park home. No pre-registration is required to attend either event. Harriman State Park in eastern Idaho has an event of a different sort on the 22nd and 23rd as Harriman Heritage Days takes place. Find out about haying with horses, traditional camping, Dutch oven cooking demonstrations, and perhaps, best of all on a hot August day, a chance to eat some homemade ice cream. And we've got another reminder for you about the Atomic Salmon Derby taking place September 19th through the 21st on the Columbia and Snake Rivers near the Tri-Cities. The event, sponsored by Griggs, which sponsors our show on our Pasco affiliate 610 KONA, has a $3,500 first prize package and lots of other opportunities for winning as well. Better still, the proceeds go to a good cause. Stop by Griggs in Pasco to get your Derby tickets or log on to AtomicSalmonDerby.com. That's AtomicSalmonDerby.com to find out more. While you're on the web, check out our website at NorthwesternOutdoors.com. You'll find in-depth information about our show and audio from last week's show in case you missed part of it. We've also got a Facebook page too. Follow us, like us at Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're always posting information that doesn't necessarily make it on the show. That's NorthwesternOutdoors.com and Northwestern Outdoors Radio on Facebook. That's all for this week. Make sure you tune into our next broadcast because we're going to be giving away a pair of Leupold Mackenzie binoculars. They're a fantastic pair of binoculars that's an entry-level set, and you won't believe it. They're that good. We are out of time. So until our next broadcast, take care, God bless, and make it a point to spend some time outdoors.